I'd love to just get a little bit of background in terms of where Vocal came from and how you currently see people using it, how you use it yourself.
So the story is actually pretty interesting. So initially, I just thought this was a problem. So I do send a lot of voice messages using iMessage, WhatsApp, and so on. And I was wondering, why is there no way to do this in Gmail? And so about a year ago, we just built a scrappy app, like an MVP that does this, just a little Chrome extension. It took us maybe like a day, so zero effort. We just launched it. We didn't have any analytics, no pricing, no nothing. We just left it there for a year. And with time, we realized, hey, there are people using this. And at some point, we actually implemented analytics. That was something like a month ago. So like a year after the initial like launch of this extension. And we realized that there are like hundreds of people using this on a daily basis. And we haven't put any effort into this. Whereas our real business that we're focusing most of our energy on never reached 100 daily active users. And so that's when we decided, okay, let's spend a bit more time there, rebrand it, make it look good, add more features, improve the user experience, and add a pricing so that this also makes financially sense for us. Yeah, and here we are today.
That's fantastic to see how your journey and how you found, well, hey, people are using the audio message element. So let's focus there and build something more out of it. That's awesome to see. It's so funny. I came across you guys when I was Googling for exactly what you provide. I was like, I love talking over writing. I just find it easier. It's more convenient and it has more repurposing potential as well, which I'll get into in a second. But just for convenience with friends, it's like, I would want to send an iMessage voice memo or a WhatsApp voice memo or Slack maybe, but in email, you can't do it. I don't know why Gmail doesn't have it or why any email provider seems to lack that when so many people want that kind of thing. So when I was Googling, yours was the resource I found. I was like, I'm jumping on this. I told all my friends who like voice memos as well, like, you guys got to try this. It's so much better. And for personal convenience, it's useful. But on top of that, I think a lot about repurposing. And so when I think about writing an email, that email can become a blog post maybe, or an article, a white paper, whatever. But then you have to do additional work to make the audio or the video. And so what I like to do is I like to record with audio or video, and then I can put it on YouTube or a podcast and later then have it transcribed and such. And so there are some situations where my lighting's not right, or I just don't, my appearance might not be the best for video, for camera. So I think, hey, if I can record the voice memo, that MP3, I could then use it as a podcast episode potentially. I think about, there's this band, the Postal Service. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
Postal Service, like indie rock band. They got their start by sending their tracks back and forth. That's why they call it the Postal Service. They would send them over the mail. So one member would record a track on the East Coast, send it to the other member on the West Coast, back and forth. And that's how they collaborate. And so I think about people, if they can't connect in a real live conversation, which is what we're doing in voice memos, right? We're saying, hey, we're not going to talk live, but we'll still have a conversation back and forth just outside of that real-time context. So I think about people sending voice messages back and forth as a way to collaborate. Do you ever see people doing that conversation through NetApp or now Vocal?
Yes, I mean we see many different ways of using it, and we're actually surprised by how much some people use it. So I think our most active users send between like 150 and 200 voice messages a week, which is a lot. And so I don't have any specific examples about repurposing data, voice messages, but definitely either using it for sales, so kind of account managers reaching out to their customers, like sales people reaching out to potential customers, or like just friends discussing between each other, or these sorts of more asynchronous long form conversations that you would have with some friend around like a complex topic. Instead of having like a 2-hour call, you just have 10-minute discussions every time per email where someone shares his thoughts, and then the other person responds a few days later. So that's kind of how we've seen this being used, but there are definitely many more ways people are using it, and we can't get around too many.
Yeah. No, I think about how, one way I've used it personally is when a customer might reach out with a question, rather than just taking the time to type out something where I have to edit it with punctuation and all that stuff and get the wording exactly right. I feel like when you're talking, you have more freedom, you have more liberty. Even in this conversation now, I'll later have it transcribed. You'll see that transcription wouldn't look great in text alone without some editing. But in live conversation, we can kind of just think in real time, and whatever words come out, that's what comes out. And that's totally fine. So I think about when I talk to a customer, it's faster, it's easier. And that MP3 I send to them, I can also reuse that MP3 next time a customer has a question. So rather than copy pasting the text, if I just prefer to talk, I can talk and have them hear my voice again next time as well. Or if I wanted, I could have a team member of mine transcribe and edit it, and then we'll have a text response. But the audio just feels like such a richer connection. I mean, think about podcasts you listen to, right? Like you feel like you know the person. With text,
exactly, no.
It's like, Absolutely. Who really sent this, you know?
And we also see influencers for that reason using it as a more personal way of connecting with their audience. So usually an influencer, they have their inboxes and they hope to be able to respond to everyone, but as the audience grows, it gets harder. And so we have one example of an influencer who is actually doing this. So instead of replying back per message, he just sends short voice notes to say, hey, thanks for reaching out, and then answers the questions and moves on. So for him, it's less effort. And for the person receiving the message, it feels so exclusive, so premium. This person recorded a voice message for me. Wow. So yeah.
Exactly. And I love the influencer example because you're connecting with your audience in that personal way. I think where it can become scalable, though, is that MP3, because it's richer than text, that can be turned into an audiogram. That influencer could then post messages like that on their social and reach far more people with that same message. So they're all hearing them rather than just seeing them. So I see the scalable element here because you can make one response, but if you have thousands of followers, you might not record thousands of them. But this is where I think it has an impact, but still feels personal, just like podcasts do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's really exciting to see this. So I'm really curious now, what's next for you in terms of where you might take Vocal?
Everything is open. It's the first time that as a team we've built an app that grows so fast. So that gets us quite excited. The fact that everyone who is using our app is actually sharing it makes this such a powerful sort of viral loop type of app. So it's first of all super hard to predict growth. We've kind of grown 100% week over week in the past few months. Obviously, at some point this will stop, but it can keep going for a while. Super long term, we know that if we get very big, Gmail will build this into their product. So we know that we have a limited time frame to build a wonderful app and then pivot it to something else. But Gmail is slow, so we definitely have at least 3 years, which is more than enough to enjoy this business. But yeah, no. Next is kind of what you were saying as well. Maybe adding a feature so that we transcribe voice messages, so that you have the text as well as the voice notes, and maybe a bit of message editing, voice message editing in the browser. And then we'll really kind of follow what our customers ask for. So one thing I'd be excited is I always get frustrated by how small podcasts struggle to grow because you just publish your podcast and you're lost in this big sea. But you could actually send your podcast per email. So what about a sort of, what is it called? Substack, but for podcasts. That's also something we could get into. Yeah, we'll see.
That's a fantastic idea. I love that. Podcasts via email as a new channel. That's awesome. I think that would also really open up podcasts to people who might not even know about podcasts still, or might not take the time to always search things out. But let's say if you subscribe to someone's email newsletter, why not have that email newsletter contain a podcast in it? So you record the podcast, just send the email blast to all your listeners. It goes out to them that way too.
Exactly, yeah. And finally, maybe another thing would be a mobile app. So obviously, most voice messages today are taken per mobile, so WhatsApp, iMessage, and so on. And so there is definitely a need to be able to send voice messages from your phone while you're walking around, or this kind of stuff. It's pretty hard to build because you have to connect probably with Gmail and so on. But that might be something to do as well.
Well, that's a really cool idea as well. I love it. Well, I hope that you'll keep me posted on all the updates, and we could do a follow-up episode later down the line about them.
Absolutely. No, there are many new features to build, and we will need many beta testers.
For sure. And just so all the listeners and followers can follow the app again and download it and the extension, remind everyone where the URL is, vocal.email, right?
Exactly. Vocal.email. That's where you have to go to try the app out. There is a free plan. So play around. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll tell everyone, check it out. And thanks again, Nat. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Pleasure.